So I just got out of bed. It's the last day of 2025, and I still have not put together my review for Winter Opera St. Louis's production of Gilbert and Sullivan's The Sorcerer. It played at the Kirkwood Performing Arts Center from November 7th to the 9th of 2025. I debated whether or not I wanted to even make this review in the first place, waffling on it time and again. I did not like this show. Me making this review was kind of a lapse in scheduling, where I had to get through a couple more reviews and then do the press junket reviews for shows that were running at the time. And I found that this was the last one that I had yet to do for the year, and it was going to be one where I was panning the show. But that's more towards the material itself, and the ways that Winter Opera St. Louis tried to update it to make it actually watchable, but really just did not work. But absolutely nothing against the individual actors and crew members who tried to make it as good as they can. And I really did not want to end 2025 on a sour note. The last months of 2025 in the world over, as well as my own personal life, have been absolutely miserable. To review a bad musical comedy is probably one of the hardest things you can do as a critic. There's only so many times that you can say, that's not funny, that's not smart, these songs are not good. So I decided that in order to keep my sanity throughout all of this, that I was going to compartmentalize this review, focusing the first part on actually lambasting the material itself and the, quite frankly, egregious manner in which Winter Opera St. Louis tried to update it, versus what I actually liked about it, which was the genuine effort that the cast and crew put into it. So starting off by talking about the show itself, this is Gilbert and Sullivan's The Sorcerer. It was one of the first collaborations between Gilbert and Sullivan before the HMS Pinafore and the string of hits that came after it with the Pirates of Penzance and the Mikado, and the fact that this was an early effort clearly shows. This was back when Gilbert and Sullivan were still trying to find their footing as artists specializing in comic operas, after they resolved themselves to try and make comic operas that had a little bit of heft to them, something that would later be fully realized in their next works after this. And compared to those, The Sorcerer is such a juvenile effort. This plot is so needlessly complicated, and yet it's just extremely basic to the point of being stupid. The show is set out in the country and in a state called Ploverly. The villagers of Ploverly are holding a celebration for the wedding of young aristocrats, Alexis Poindexter and Aileen Sangajor. The two of them are genuinely in love with each other, with Aileen admiring Alexis for his uber-educated mind and passion for social equality. It's a trait commonly found in Gilbert and Sullivan protagonists, but in those later shows, at least they weren't so annoying, because Alexis laments that even though him and Aileen are in love, both of them happen to be in the same social class, and he earnestly believes that love should thrive regardless of occupation, a lesson that I've already learned in the HMS Pinafore and Pirates of Penzance. You see where I'm going with this? So Alexis has been making efforts to encourage the villagers of Ploverly to marry outside of their station, but to no avail. Get ready for this. Behind the backs of Aileen and their families, Alexis concocts what is quite possibly the most insane cockamamie scheme that I've ever witnessed. And I've seen Mamma Mia. Aileen employs the services of a sorcerer. This is gonna be one of those days. Alexis hires the sorcerer, John Wellington Wells, to concoct a potion that, when spiked to the tea of the wedding ceremony, will cause the drinker to pass out for an hour and then wake up to fall in love with the first person they see. Because that can't have serious repercussions at all, can it? It's a pretty typical plot for stories centered around love potions. Even A Midsummer Night's Dream did it. And of course, much like that show before it, the central message of it is the power of love. The Sorcerer establishes at the very beginning the couples that are actually made for each other before they get switched around. Alexis and Aileen, their parents are Poindexter and Lady Songajor, the unrequited love between commoner Constance Partlet and the local vicar/poet Dr. Daly, as well as the seemingly cute elderly romance between Constance's mother, the church's pew opener, and the elderly notary who officiates the wedding. So when the couples all get switched around and have to try to find ways to get back together, it's so dull and predictable. And the choices that Gilbert and Sullivan made regarding the presence of Wells as the Sorcerer were just so sloppy. Absolutely nothing within the first half of Act 1 establishes the existence of sorcery or magic or anything, as if we shouldn't be alarmed at the presence of an actual sorcerer, after we just spent the last half hour establishing the groundwork what is really an old-fashioned comic opera. Now, when Wells does get involved in the romantic entanglements in Act 2, he feels genuine remorse for what he's done for some reason. Like, he doesn't even attempt to make himself the antagonist of the story. The climax of the show is literally just him sacrificing his own life to reverse the spell. Isn't that kind of antithetical to what Gilbert and Sullivan was trying to say here? Again, it's just so sloppy. In fact, Winter Opera St. Louis's production was actually the St. Louis premiere of this show. Like, literally, it has not been produced in St. Louis ever, and it's like 150 some odd year existence, and the only thing this production was good for was showing why it should be kept buried. And the manner in which Winter Opera St. Louis tried to hide how lightweight this material is, it honestly just comes across as very insulting to the audience's intelligence. And that was the insertion of pop cultural references and period anachronisms. When Alexis talks about the love potion, Aileen goes, "Not number 9. There's a song in Act 2 when Wells gets caught up with Lady Songajor. In order to ward Lady Songajor away from him, he lists all of the ways in which he's actually disgusting. 2 of those ways were St. Louis references, gorging on gooey butter cake, skinny dipping, and Creve Coeur. It's like, is Ploverly even in St. Louis? What are you even talking about? But the final nail in the coffin for me was the last scene of the show, when Dr. Daly realizes that he is going to be the only character in the show who will be forever alone, outside of Wells, who at this point is dead. And Daly announces that he shall now resign himself to live the most joyless existence possible as a theater critic. Yeah, I really didn't need to hear that. And there's some more that I could mention, but honestly, I've just kind of blocked them out of my memory. It was just such a perplexing, confusing decision as to why they would insert these kinds of references into this. It kind of just makes the audience, at least me, feel insulted that this lightweight comic plot isn't enough already for us to enjoy. Like, I would have been fine if I just said that the plot and songs were mid and that's it. This is definitely one of Gilbert and Sullivan's weaker scores. It's pleasant to listen to enough, but the lyrics are really choppy. In particular, the patter songs. And there's only like 1 or 2 melodies that I can hum right now. But then to add on to it bad improv and ad-libbing and pop cultural references that didn't even exist at the time the show was written, instead of just leaving me dissatisfied, it just left me angry. If it weren't for that, I would have found this production a little bit more tolerable, especially because the cast and crew tried to make it work. The staging by director John Stevens was a bit clunky at times, in particular with the big group numbers and trying to get all of those people on the same stage at one time. But the parts where it was just individual scenes with a small number of characters by themselves, I thought were pretty cute. And the performances that he managed to get from the cast really showed just how high the stakes were in this, even though from an objective standpoint, they're practically non-existent. The Gilbert and Sullivan music, as much as I thought it was pretty weak, was conducted well enough by Scott Schoonover. As a musical director, Schoonover does excellent work, making even the most forgettable scores easy to listen to. The scenic design by Scott Lobel is probably one of the best looking that I've seen after the HMS Pinafore. Same with the period costumes by Jen Bloom-Tatara. Even the lighting design was well done in some parts. During the daytime countryside moments, it has a nice amber glow to it, but when the moments of magic happen, they do some really cool stuff with the lights. Like when Wells creates the love potion, he summons spirits in the form of talking heads being illuminated with blue lights coming up from underneath them like spooky lighting. Even the props by Laura Skroska were well done, including the tea set onto which the potion was spiked. Another thing about this production that I thought was cute was the tea set was brought out by two maids who were played in cameo roles by Gina Gelati, the founder and managing director of Winter Opera St. Louis, and Mary Pillsbury, the sponsor of this production. The performances from the main cast were consistently good all around, with all of them having pretty much the same standard of quality, with performances that acknowledge how goofy the show is, but at the same time trying to take it seriously, even though Gilbert and Sullivan themselves didn't. That and the people who tried to insert pop cultural references into this. Jacob Lassiter as John Wellington Wells did great at conjuring the eccentricities of this sorcerer. The moment when he was concocting the potion was full of maniacal glee from Lassiter. He also does great at showing off the nervous energy that came from when he was regretting making the potion, and the farcical romantic complications he gets roped into along the way. Alexis is played by Gene Stenger, and Aileen is played by Alina Tamburini. Both of them had really great chemistry together as a couple. You follow them all the way through in regards to their ups and downs throughout the show. James Eder as Sir Poindexter, and Emily Harmon as Lady Songajor were hilarious, uptight, aristocratic types. And the anxious, love-struck sputtering that they have to do around each other was great to watch. Gary Moss masters Dr. Daly's comedic timing, especially in his reciting of Daly's poetry, often commenting on the current state of love and marriage. And Moss's dynamic with Courtney Fletcher as Constance, and Karen Kanakis as Mrs. Bartlett was great to watch. I really thought the performances from this cast worked very well for the production they were trying to do. And the directing and the production design really showed that they were all on the same page. But it really just does not hide the fact that The Sorcerer is such a weak musical that does not age well, and the references that they tried to put into it only made it worse. This is probably the weakest musical that I have seen this year. The material itself is probably among the worst that I've seen. Just straight up a complete insult to musical comedy, and to the audience's intelligence. But I will have to commend Winter Opera St. Louis for actually making an effort to revive a show from the dead. It takes some serious guts for a company to want to do that. And even if they did make some big mistakes along the way, that's the reason why mistakes exist, so that we can learn from them and give way to even better works down the line. And so, a toast to failing forward, to making mistakes we can learn from, especially those we are never going to forget. So it turns out this review wasn't as negative as I initially thought it was going to be. I'll be honest, talking about this show with you all, and talking about how kind of miserable the last few months have been for us, has honestly made me feel a lot better. This has put me in a better mood than when I started the day off with. It's given me a little bit of clarity of purpose, really. That what I'm doing with the Jack Reviews Musicals brand is a worthwhile endeavor for me to keep on doing. My next couple videos are going to be look-backs on the year 2025, including my year in review, but before that is going to be a very special video that I think you all will find really surprising coming from me, and I cannot wait to share them with you all, as well as reviews of all of the exciting musical theater productions that are coming in 2026. If you don't want to miss those, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like, and comment down below what your thoughts on Winter Opera St. Louis's production of Gilbert and Sullivan's The Sorcerer are. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, Long live the musical!